Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Difanis, broker owner of Remax Realty Associates with offices in Champaign, Mahomet, and Monticello, Illinois. I'm recording an end of week real estate market roundup for the Champaign-Urbana metro area, and this is Good Friday evening. So let me start with that. If you're a Christian, we're heading into Easter weekend, which of course is a hugely sacred holiday honoring the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. And if you're a member of the Jewish faith, of course, this week also included the Passover holiday. And both of those are hugely significant family holidays and faith holidays where traditionally people are used to gathering in churches, in temples, and around dining room tables in ways that we simply don't get to do. And for many of us, it's the first time in our entire lives that we haven't been able to enjoy those traditions with large groups of other people. So first and foremost, I hope you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. And secondly, I hope that if you are a Christian or if you're a member of the Jewish faith, that you're finding a way to adapt and still be able to honor the traditions and the significance that these religious holidays bring for you and your family. So now turning to the real estate market, I wanted to give a quick update on what's going on in the marketplace. I mentioned before that in the entire state of Illinois, our governor's executive stay-at-home order excludes every aspect of the real estate industry. So real estate brokers, home inspectors, lenders, banks, title companies, and attorneys, as well as most home improvement and repair professionals, are exempt from that stay-at-home order. That, of course, means we still have to be incredibly sensitive and responsible under the current circumstances, but the real estate market is still permitted to function, which is incredibly important for those buyers and sellers who are really depending on it and whose lives are really depending on it in terms of keeping roofs over their heads and being able to continue on with plans for getting moved or relocating for new jobs or downsizing or whatever. So our market in the entire state does continue to be able to operate legally. Obviously, within my team and most real estate professionals more generally, we're seeing lots of alterations in workflow. So let me talk about that for a minute. We have a lot of buyers that in the Champaign-Urbana metro area, we have a very transient community. We have people that relocate to our community from all over the country, but also all over the world, and relocate out of our community. And that's driven by the Big Ten Research University, the University of Illinois, as well as by the healthcare market here. And so we have a lot of those folks that are not getting on planes and are not driving cross country. And therefore are not making the trips here to do the house hunting they normally would be doing in preparation for a new job or a relocation that is definitely coming up and still on the books for this year. So there's a lot of talk about doing virtual showings, and I want to talk for just a minute about what that means. I will tell you that speaking for myself, when I am doing virtual showings for buyer clients, I tend to discourage doing real-time virtual showings. And the biggest reason for that is whether I'm doing it via FaceTime or Skype or some other video phone call type of interface, the actual video resolution, if I'm doing that in real time, is number one, never as good as full HD or 4K that most of our smartphones can record at. And number two, it starts out at best at a lower resolution. And then, of course, depending on your cellular signal strength, it drops way down from there. And so if I'm wearing a buyer agent hat and I have an out-of-state buyer client who is depending on me to be able to showcase that which they need to know and that which I would be pointing out to them if we were there in person, obviously, they already have access to the marketing materials, the listing agent's marketing materials and virtual tour on the property. But what they aren't able to see is anything in the way of defects or blemishes or drawbacks that I would be pointing out in person. With that in mind, it is especially important to have as much detail as possible because we need to make sure that buyer clients who are depending upon a virtual showing are seeing that fine level of detail. So with that being the case, what I have personally been doing with the approval of my clients and with full disclosure to any sellers and sellers agents whose properties I'm doing those showings is I have been doing a 4K video capture wearing a lavalier microphone so that what I'm saying to my clients on the recording is very audible and clear, and then going through and recording the video, editing it together quickly, and then sharing it a few hours later with my clients. I make sure the sellers know I'll be there, I'll be shooting video. I also make sure they know it will not be posted or shared publicly. While my buyer clients aren't getting to see it in real time, when they do see it a few hours later, they're seeing a tremendous amount of detail and seem to have so far preferred that method. So that's what virtual showings, at least in my case, look like for me. For our sellers, one of the best things that we've been doing already for years is these immersive 3D Matterport virtual tours. And ours is utilizing the current next generation Matterport, which is much, much more detailed than the first generation Matterport 3D tour system that we first deployed several years ago. Why is that important? Well, it's always been useful, we've thought. That's why I have so many thousands of my dollars invested in it. But right now, sellers naturally are really sensitive to not wanting to have any more excess foot traffic through their houses than necessary. And so think about it. Before this type of technology existed, when I would solicit feedback from agents that did showings, a very common type of feedback was, "Oh, it was a great house, showed well, price seemed okay. The layout totally didn't work for my clients." Well, ideally, we don't want those buyers and their agents and their footprints and their fingerprints and their breathing in my client's airspace if the layout isn't ultimately well suited, and if we can find a way to make sure they know that before they cross the threshold. And so the 3D Matterport technology is the very best thing we have at this point for ensuring that people can see exactly what the layout looks like, how every room of the house is laid out, how the pieces all fit together, and get as close to a real-world immersive look and feel as they would get having their own eyeballs and feet inside my listings. So our Matterport tours we're still doing on every one of our new listings in the hopes that it will limit the number of people through. I don't want to drive down the exposure, but I do want to drive down the foot traffic from people who are ultimately going to rule it out by making sure they can tell this isn't going to be the right fit before they get their feet and their eyeballs into the house. So our 3D tour technology has been hugely useful for a long time, but even more so today. We are continuing to take new listings. I'm putting 2 on today, this Friday. This always happens. Clients that we're working through on listing intake always want to list their houses. As it turns out, they get the last bit finished on a Friday evening. So 2 new listings are going on yet tonight. I had another one that went on a couple of days ago. We're continuing to see offers and showing activity. I do not want to overstate our market condition, however. We're seeing a huge slowdown compared to what we normally would be seeing. Right now, this would be like the middle of peak season. So this would be when things are absolutely at full throttle. Obviously, we are seeing a substantial slowdown in actual in-person showing activities. We are still seeing offers being received on our listings. We're still having buyers write offers. I've had some of each this past week. Even while we in Illinois and people in most other parts of the country are under these stay-at-home orders. So I do want to offer you some assurance that the market continues to operate. And if you do have plans where you're depending on making a real estate purchase or a sale, just know we still have the ability to help you. And if your circumstances don't dictate that you need to be doing this right now, then of course, stay at home and hopefully enjoy some family time and some downtime. One other development this week is at least one of our local lenders was indicating that they now have the ability under certain circumstances to go ahead and get mortgage approvals even for people who are temporarily furloughed from their jobs. And so we're finding one of the most ironic aspects of this global pandemic is when this was first ramping up, I figured, gosh, well, healthcare, which is already our second biggest employer in the local economy, healthcare, it's going to turn into an instant growth industry. Well, ironically, people are finding out almost everywhere it's the exact opposite. The very immediate impact of the pandemic is nobody's getting anything done related to healthcare or dentistry they don't have to get done. So there's lots of people that are in healthcare that are actually seeing hours reduced, pay reduced in the short term. Because all of those things that are not happening in the short term are going to need to happen in the longer term. So just be aware, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions and I can hook you up with the right lender to talk to. But there are opportunities if you know you have a job that is ultimately secure, but in the near term you've been furloughed, there are opportunities for being able to continue with that. And we had an agent from my firm that had exactly that circumstance. Client got furloughed from work the day after they made the offer, still proceeding and still confident in their ability to proceed even while they're furloughed during the mortgage underwriting process. Kind of counterintuitive. We're still having closings. The workflow has changed a lot. I'm not going to closings. Realtors are uninvited for your safety. It is the closer, the attorneys, and the buyers that have to sign if the buyers need to sign in person. So we've made a lot of alterations. So as I have said before, my expectation is, to the extent that we're seeing a pretty notable decrease in market activity, both people putting houses onto the market, so there's some decrease in inventory because there aren't as many people putting homes on, and also there's a decrease in buyers that are physically here and active in the market. To the extent that that's happening in the short term, I do still expect that that will be partially, maybe largely offset by a lot of that activity still happening during peak season, just happening during the later part of peak season, which is going to be May and June. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, no guarantees, but that is your up to the minute take on what is going on in the Champaign-Urbana market area. As I've said before, we are taking very seriously that the real estate industry has been exempted as an essential business and service. And so if you need us, know that we are here for you and still able to do work for you. And if you don't need us right now, by all means, stay at home, stay safe, protect your health, and protect others, and we will be ready and eager to serve you whenever the time is right. I hope you have a blessed Easter weekend ahead.